Hello, Sarah Sabin, transformational leadership and business coach here. And I am excited to be talking to Justin Loza, who is founder and CEO of dKomplex IT. Justin, would you like to, in a few sentences, introduce yourself to my listeners?
Sure. My name is Justin Loza. I'm the CEO of dKomplex IT. As you mentioned, some of our clients call it dKomplex it. They tell us Justin's here to decomplex it for us. And so that's a little
Oh
saying
my
that
God,
goes
I
with
didn't get that.
it. And I'm a CEO who teaches. I believe in setting up systems, sustainable systems at every turn. And I'm really fascinated by leadership in general. I think of myself as a leadership craftsman, and I'm
Yeah.
always practicing and learning and trying to apply my leadership in my company. And dKomplex IT is my channel, is the vehicle that I channel all my creativity through. And I call dKomplex IT a IT plus firm because we do really good IT work, but there's a lot of companies who do really good IT work. We also do IT and organizational effectiveness, and we couple those together, and which deals with human dynamics. And we are really good at helping clients implement Microsoft Power Platform solutions um, in a way that their users really understand and are able to use their full capability of using those tools.
Well, thank you for sharing, Justin. And you mentioned a word I love to dig down deeper into, which is leadership. And you used the term leadership craftsman, was it?
Craftsman, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Could you tell me a little bit more about what you mean by that?
Uh, I think leadership is there's so much to learn with it, and so I'm a craftsman. I just try to continually hone my craft in leadership, and I have a coach who who's an expert. He's semi-retired in his 70s, and he he dissects every move and everything I say to help me recognize how I'm leading my team.
Mm,
And I love feedback. And I think being a craftsman means that you're always improving and trying to build on your leadership skills.
100%. And how do you see that real dedication to leadership development impacting your team and indeed the growth of your business?
Big impact. Um, Prior to getting the coach, I was always really fascinated with leadership in general, and I had an idea of what it was. Um, I would never really had training, but after getting the coach, uh, I started to notice things with my team and how their performance has improved in
Mm,
different ways, how much more satisfied they are with their in their roles, how open they are, and I think that the leadership focus by me has really helped my team develop individually and as a team, and we're in our groove now. And I think it has had a big impact, and that's why I really focus on it.
mm, okay. And in terms of the corporate culture or the company culture that you've intentionally been trying to build,
Yeah.
how do you define that culture and what steps do you take to continuously ensure that your team feel valued?
Well, it's a good question. I start small, and I I practice some core skills that I think everybody should have
Mhm,
that contributes to our culture. And one of them is giving and receiving feedback,
mhm.
and so that people don't have any blind spots and are aware of how they're behaving in terms of their work. And um, that's a good question. Um, oh, oh yeah. So and also I've implemented uh, some systems, and one of them is a coaching cohort.
Mhm.
And I never was afforded the opportunity to have a coach in any of the jobs that I worked in, or
Mm,
anybody to talk to other than like my manager.
mhm,
And when I got to coach, I realized how valuable it was. So I thought, I think it'd be great for everybody else to have one as well. So I created a coaching cohort, and that has really helped maintain the culture that I'm trying to build, which is a culture of openness and curiosity and learning and development. And I think that having the coaching cohort has been huge. People really appreciate the ability to talk to somebody. And sometimes we're so busy in the week, they gotta talk to him on the weekend. And he's so flexible and he's able to do that. And they really appreciate it. And they really they take me up on the offer for a coaching cohort. Nobody has to do it, but
mm,
they recognize the value in it. And the deal is, if they do want to try the coaching cohort, they have to try it for at least 3 months,
mhm.
and just to really, really see what it's like. And so far, not one person has pulled out of it, so they really
Yeah,
enjoy it.
that's
Yeah.
awesome. And I think with coaching, I mean, there's also a lot that we can say about the role of a leader as a coach, because the role of a leader is to get the best out of their team. But also, you cannot coach people that are not open to coaching, right? So, you could bring a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. I
Mm-hmm.
think is the expression that comes to mind. So it's interesting to me that as the leader of your company, who is obviously so open and so enthusiastic about coaching, that seems to have had a trickle down effect to your team and their openness to coaching as well.
Yeah.
Because essentially we see what someone actually does, not what they tell you to do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Modeling it. I believe in modeling,
Mm,
and I talk about the coach all the time and how I give examples so they can see the value. Um, I try to help them realize that they can literally call the coach at any time if they have anything that's on their mind, anything. If they're irritated at me for any reason or whatnot, if they're feeling heated, because we're in a really intense work environment,
mhm,
really tight deadlines and whatnot, and sometimes I push, and I help them realize that they can reach out at any time. And for example, I tell them sometimes I get a little, emotional at work, and we all do. We're human. And sometimes I just gotta pause and say, okay, I'll be right back. And I call my coach, and I just kind of just talk openly with him. He listens really closely and gives good advice to help me realize the situation. And I tell them I'm really open with the staff, and I tell them that I do that, and I think that they realize how important it is to be able to just speak up when you need somebody to talk to like that.
mm. Yeah, I mean, the part about emotions, it's interesting because a lot of people I talk to are like, well, I'm not an emotional person. But even if you are not an outwardly emotional person, the emotions that are interplaying inside of us affect our decision making, affect how we show up, affect the energy we bring to work, our team, etc. So rather than
Absolutely.
letting those accumulate, to process them as they come up, and there's various ways of of doing that. It could be talking, it could be somatic body practices, it could be meditation, but it's such an amazing practice to do that like literally every
Absolutely.
day. Right.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And what you just said about accumulating, letting it accumulate. I used to do that. Maybe I had an employee that was doing something, a behavior that, I didn't like. And I always like never had the ability to tell that person how I was feeling for, I kind of bottle it in, and then it happens more and more and more. And then it gets to a point where, shoot, I really got to tell this person now because it's getting to a point of no return. And I realized my coach helped me realize that good just to let the steam out, and and give people feedback regularly, and that's part of maintaining the culture too. Every day, if I see something on a call, I'll pick up the phone right after the call, and I will give direct, straight feedback to people about a behavior I see that I want them to just be aware of that, and then kind of tell them how I think things should go, and we have a dialogue with it, and that always lets out the steam. It's much better way of working by telling people immediately issues that I think that are there at the moment.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's really important that companies understand that appraisals once a year is not feedback. Feedback is a continuous process.
Absolutely.
And it needs to happen continuously rather than waiting to a certain point. And it sounds like that's very much part of your culture.
Very much so now. Now it is.
So, in terms of your entrepreneurial journey, what do you consider to be the most significant challenges you faced in growing your business to its current stage, and how did you overcome them?
So two things
Mhm.
come to mind: my youth and staffing. I'm 35, and I started dKomplex 6 years ago. As of next year, or next month, sorry, next month will be 6 year mark. And
Congratulations.
thank you, thank you. And I was 29 when I started, and I still had a lot to learn. I knew I had a lot to learn just going into it, but I knew that I could be risky young, and I figured that, if I failed, I had time to recover in terms of, retirement and all that stuff. But just my youth. So what I've done is to help mitigate that challenge, or just to help me with it. I just, I really, I reach out to my community. I have a coach, an older, wiser coach, and I really tap into people who are very experienced as much as possible.
Mhm.
People are very willing to give you advice, especially older people. And I live in Monterey Bay, and I don't know if you know about it here, but it's kind of crude, but you're either nearly dead or newlywed around here. And it's just there's a lot of retired people here, and I volunteer, so I have access to them. And I mean, so many experiences. People are just so willing to help you, just to talk and give you advice. And that has been really helpful as I've been learning how to build my company.
Mm.
That was a huge challenge at first, though, because I didn't know what to do and at the beginning, and I thought I knew what to do, and I tried. People said, okay, I need a strategic plan. I need to start doing this and that and this and that, and everything will, the business will run, and it does for the most part. All the typical things, you have your accounting and your your pay and your HR um, and your procedures that you start establishing. But leadership is so important in that equation. You can have all those systems set up perfect, but without a leadership style and a way of managing your company, and getting people to go along with you at a direction that you set, with their full competence and commitment, is the secret sauce to make it all work really, really well.
Mm.
And so youth, I'd say, was the biggest challenge. As
Mm.
I get older, it's becoming less of a challenge. It's becoming more intuitive, and I still have a lot to learn. I understand that. But I think that I am in a much better spot now with the 6 years of experience and going through that gauntlet. It has polished me up somewhat, I would say.
Mm.
And, and staffing is the other big challenge, because as a startup, at the beginning, it was just me, and I never had been a manager before starting dKomplex. I never had like the role or title of manager, so it was my first time being like an accountable manager of myself at first. And then as time went on, one staff member, like 6 months after dKomplex started, part time. And that was actually probably what I mean by the challenge of staffing is, when you're in a part time working environment where you don't have enough revenue to sustain somebody full time, but you do have a need for some help. You have to find people that have the availability, the ability to do good work with that, with having very little hours to use and stuff like that. And so it's been very challenging these last 6 years on staffing. As we grow, though, things are getting a little easier. and just another complication now of having full-time staff. So it's a whole nother level of challenges.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And just to pick up on some of the points that you raised, the youth point, there is no substitute for the real life experience of getting out there and actually building the business, rather than learning about it from books or an MBA, or even just talking to people about building a business until you've actually done it.
Yeah.
You don't know. And although there are always people that are like ready and willing to give you advice, what tends to happen after a period of time, and you mentioned this word intuition, you start to be able to filter out what you're going to listen to and what you're not going to listen to, because if you listen to everything all the time, you'd never hear your own voice. And it's a voice that comes from experience and knowing yourself and knowing your business. So that was really interesting that you mentioned youth, because even as an experienced older person, the ones that continue to evolve are still constantly learning.
Absolutely.
And
I find myself a little less like on the intuition side of the house. I'm finding myself thinking about the things that my coach has been teaching me, and I'm able. Sometimes I reach for the phone and I want to call him, or I want to send him a message, and I'm like, no, I got this. And I know like it's okay to reach out for help, but I start thinking about our lessons and what I've learned and what I know I can do, and I pause and I say, okay, I actually do know what to do, and this is how I think I'm gonna do it, and I do it, and it turns out like a coach did help me with it, and then I go back and I tell my coach, I say, guess what just happened? I just did this. It's great.
Yeah, no, that's the power of coaching. It means that you actually start coaching yourself at some point as well, because we always actually, not always, but quite a lot of the time we know the answer. We're just looking for validation outside of ourselves even when we don't actually need it.
Yeah.
So one last question I'm going to ask you, Justin, and I'm going to challenge you to answer it succinctly.
Okay.
What advice would you give your 20-year-old self if you were to talk to them now?
Get comfortable with feedback and giving and receiving feedback. I used to be extremely uncomfortable with hearing things that I'm doing not well. And I think it's extremely important for people to know how other people perceive them in their daily lives and their work. And so getting comfortable giving and asking for feedback is one bit of advice I would give myself. Another one would be active listening. Practice your active listening, and don't just hear what people say. Really listen, give them the respect that they deserve, and understand what they're saying, and have good communication back and forth. And I think the last piece of it is know the difference between content and process, meaning not what you're talking about, but how you're talking about it and how things are happening. Recognize how people are reacting to what you're saying. And it's kind of like the underworld of what's going on around you. People are, strategic planning is a lot of content on the walls, but how people are interacting and how that's happening is way more important, or in the interactions between two people and how people are receiving what you're saying, and recognizing that and keeping a journal regularly so you can go look back at how those the process is unfolding, is super important. And I would tell myself to start that immediately.
Yeah. Can you imagine actually if we'd all have known that at the age of 20, if I had known what I know now at the age of 20, I don't know, I would have had probably a different journey, but who knows? Anyway, Justin, thank you so much for this interview today. I've really enjoyed chatting with you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sarah.
And my pleasure. And for anyone listening, I hope that you have enjoyed this episode of Leading in the Modern Way. If you would like to be involved in the series, then please reach out to me. Bye for now.